Thank you for your patience. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us in this discussion today on dementia, organized by Taylor's University School of Medicine and Taylor's University Medical Society. My name is Sadisha, a third-year medical student, and on behalf of Taylor's University, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you today. We appreciate you taking your time off your busy schedule today to join us. We hope that you find this discussion to be fruitful and engaging. This will be our itinerary today. We have two very knowledgeable guest speakers with us today who will be sharing their knowledge and personal experience on dementia. At the end of the discussion, we will be having a Q&A session. For this Q&A session, please do scan the QR code that is displayed on the screen right now to type in your questions that you have for the speaker throughout the session. We will be displaying your questions during the Q&A session at the end, and it will be addressed by our speakers. A small reminder to all participants to keep your microphones muted at all times to prevent any interruption during the session. To officially start our session, I would like to welcome Associate Prof. Pinang to give his opening. We will wait for a few minutes. Sorry about that.
Those were the welcoming drums.
A very good afternoon, everyone. And I must apologize. It's some people had started their Chinese New Year celebrations already. So happy 2023 to everyone here this afternoon. I'm very pleased to start off the first event of the year for the Active Aging Impact Lab in collaboration with the Taylor School of Medicine, as well as the Taylor's University Medical Society. My deepest thanks to Dr. Lim, Prof. Ganesh, and the students of the Medical Society for putting this event together. The Active Aging Impact Lab brings together people from a variety of different disciplines to address issues affecting older persons. These range from financial issues, physical, mental issues, services and care, home environments, professional services, as well as trying to encourage activities that promote lifelong learning for older citizens or citizens of the golden age, so to speak. This first topic, dementia, it is something that is very important as it touches a lot of us. It impacts individuals, families, and communities. And far from just a medical problem, it also extends to the social dimension. And we are extremely lucky today to have the sharings of two very experienced people, Dr. Cecilia and Prof. Somanathan, who will share their perspectives of dementia. What are the issues affecting individuals and their families? And I hope that these discussions will spur conversations that will lead to more research, more thinking, more conversation, more awareness among all of us on the topic of dementia. And with that, I wish everyone a very fruitful afternoon, a thought-provoking discussion, and a good afternoon. So with that, I pass it back to the organizers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Anthony, for the opening remarks. Now, I'd like to invite Dr. Lim, our moderator for today, to introduce our very first guest speaker.
Okay, thank you, Letitia, and thank you, Prof. Todi, for helping to bring together this webinar with a very important message behind it. I'm Dr. Lim Suyin, a clinical neurologist and medical lecturer at the School of Medicine, Taylor's University. And I would like to introduce our distinguished first speaker, Dr. Cecilia Chan. Dr. Cecilia is a gerontologist and dementia advocate and activist who has been involved in the eldercare industry as a trainer, researcher, and educator. She has been involved in various projects that aim to provide services and facilities to the Malaysian elderly. She's a sought-after speaker and has presented widely in her area of expertise in Malaysia and abroad. Her work speaks for itself. I welcome Dr. Cecilia to share with us a talk entitled Reimagining Dementia.
First and foremost, I would like to express my deepest gratitude and appreciation to the very hardworking organizing team from Taylor's University for taking the initiative to organize this webinar on a Saturday afternoon. And I see a lot of young people here, you know, that's very impressive. I'm sure you all, you know, I thought we'd be dying to, you know, hang out and do your Saturday late night and partying since we are now able to do so. So I really appreciate all of you and thank you for having an interest in this topic. So I'll be sharing my screen now. Right, the topic is reimagining dementia, and there is a reason why this is the title of this topic. And the reason, I'd just like to share on a personal account, the reason why I began to focus my work on more on dementia. When I started, it was on the general elder care, but I then, during my journey in my profession, there is this gentleman, and he was an avid dancer. He is an amazing dancer, and in his younger days, he used to be dancing and he was in Ipoh, he was actually responsible for introducing line dancing. So he was the big timer line dancing, and he was a sought after sifu, and all the line dancer tutors and teachers learned from him. In his earliest days, he got many championship awards. He won many champions in dancer, and he got many roles. And so he has this experienced, amazing dancer, and is also a musician. So when I got to know him in this senior citizens club in Perak, Ipoh, yeah, and he was actually teaching, you know, very actively almost every day. He's a teacher by profession, educator, but when he retired, he went full swing into his passion, that is dancing. That's teaching people to dance, especially the younger generation. He wanted to pass on his knowledge and his passion. And I was one of his students, and I was very miserable at it, but I was so impressed at it. And so I learned dancing from him. So one day, I figured out that he went to see the doctor, because he realized that he was having some issues, some health issues, and he was diagnosed to have Alzheimer's, a type of dementia. And what happened was just a day after that, he stopped dancing. He stopped his class. He stopped teaching. And I was so curious, and I asked him, why is it that you stopped? I mean, you loved dancing, that's the essence of your life. And why is it? Because you are afraid that you will tip and fall? Is it afraid that you will forget the steps? Or is it because you are at risk? Why is it that you stopped dancing? And his reply actually broke my heart. And he said, Cecilia, the reason I stopped dancing is because I'm afraid that I will not be able to dance the way people expect me to dance. So I learned from that encounter that actually it has got more to do with us, the community, the society, and the environment rather than the dementia itself. So I then began to explore, and I began to become very passionate and to be very active in this world of dementia. And I began to write. And during this, during the pandemic, during the lockdown, and this is globally, all over the world, Malaysia included, we can see a very sharp decline, in people living with dementia. They decline very sharply, and we do not have any support for people living with dementia during the pandemic. And that it becomes more urgent for me to do something about it. And when I was, I wanted to get a friend of mine. It's actually a good friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine. She is living with dementia, a vascular dementia. And I wanted her to, perhaps give a sharing on her personal experience on living with dementia. And initially she was pretty excited, and she says, yeah, sure, she said, I will do a video recording of myself, sharing to people, that's particular today to all of you, on the personal account on living with dementia. And so, okay, and I was excited. It was yesterday, that's why I had to change some of the slides. Yesterday evening, she called me and she says, I'm so sorry, Cecilia. I am not able to fulfill my promise because my children felt that it's not appropriate. And this is exactly what she said. The children say that if people come to know that my mom has got dementia, it will affect my career. Two of them, and they are all professionals. And I think one of them is an accountant, one of them is a lawyer. So if it really, I'm so flabbergasted and I'm so heartbroken, because if professionals will have this stereotype and stigma, what about the rest of the society? So the stigma is so real. For me to start to actually interview people, to interview their care partners, it took me a long while. It's the first time I did it was in July 21. I was still during the pandemic lockdown. And these three people are actually a very close friend of mine. And it took me about a year to coax them to finally come out and let's just talk about your experiences. So we talk about dementia journey, life as a care partner with these three girlfriends of mine. And it took me about a year to convince them. And the only person that I managed to interview that is going through the experience themselves, a person living with dementia, is Ms. Anjang. And Anjang, even though he came out and very vivid, he's got Lewy body dementia. But he's a Singaporean, so I couldn't really find a Malaysian to talk about openly about their life as living with a person living with dementia, right? Then finally, I found a friend in Perak, Ipoh, and she is living with vascular dementia. And when we practiced, and she gave a sharing, webinar sharing, and title called "I'm Still Me." I have dementia, but I'm still me. I'm still Danita. The response that I get. And people either respond online or they call me after that or they WhatsApp me, was like, this is the general thing that you want to talk about. It's like, but she looks normal, Cecilia. Are you sure she's got dementia? She doesn't look like anybody who's got dementia. So then again, if you really give it some thoughts, if you really reflect on it, we already have a stereotype of how a person of dementia should look like, how a person of dementia would behave, and we kind of fix our stereotype in our picture into that. So that's why this is so important for us to reimagine dementia. And because, because most of you are from the medical profession, future medical professionals, I like to quote this, Tia Powell. She herself is a physician, and she wrote a book called Dementia Reimagined. And I have spoken to her a couple of times. She's from America. She's American. And it's a very vivid account of herself being a physician, and being very trained in this area in medicine. Yet when her grandmother has got Alzheimer's, and her own mother also later on developed Alzheimer's. So she has a very personal account of supporting her grandmother and her mother, Alzheimer's. Both of them have passed on. And she kind of expressed that with all the knowledge that I have, with all the medical background that I have, I find it so hard in practical sense, day to day, to manage and support my mother as she lives with dementia. Every day is a new challenge. My medical profession did not prepare me for this encounter. So I will encourage all of you. It is online. I do have a PDF version of this book to actually read Dr. Powell's sharing in this book. So she mentioned that very succinctly that there is no effective cure to date, and there is no actually prevention. We can definitely reduce the risk, no absolute prevention for sure. And she says that perhaps we can look at then how do we care and support for people living with dementia. And she said this, and I quote, this is actually from a book, that she thought that I could recognize the symptoms, I could identify the various types of the brain. But as a doctor, I was not prepared when my mother developed the disease. I did not understand the options. And this, in her book, she actually shared very openly about her struggles. Yeah. So let's just pause for a moment and just reflect. How do we talk about dementia? When we mention the word dementia, what's the first thing that comes to our brain, to our mind? What's the picture that flashes across our brain? Yeah. What's image? Okay, hold that thought. And let's just proceed, This is the, we have a tool that we use to measure dementia, what stage they are in, whether they're stage 1, stage 2, depending on what tools we use. So I'm just going to go through this. I don't have to, just have a look at the language that we use. Global Deterioration Scales. That already speaks volume, right? And then you look at this one, this Dr. Risberg actually introduced this. And we look at the language that is being used. Okay, and start from no cognitive decline to very severe. Look at we use some assistance needed, lack of orientation. There are reports of memory problems, etc. Okay, and that's another, I'm just using 2 examples. This is FAST. This is another tool that we use to measure the level of dementia of a person. Yeah, so we are actually looking at the language that's being used here. No functional decline, there's a functional decline, noticeable deficits, whether they require assistance, then total assistance, require assistance with what? Dressing, bathing, and progressive loss of ability to walk. So what is actually common here? What do we see that is common, the language that is being seen here? So the majority of the skills that we use to evaluate people living with dementia, to evaluate the progression of dementia, is we focus on the loss. We focus on the decline. We focus on what they cannot do anymore. So we do not actually acknowledge that what a person can still do. We only think about what they cannot do. And that shapes our model of care, right? So the problem with this kind of measurement tools is that it is a fantastic way to measure loss. But in doing so, in just focusing on the loss, how do we know what they still have? How do we know how to plan their activities, their care plan? So when we plan their care plans based on the loss, then we use a very a model that takes over, a very paternalistic, custodial kind of model. We kind of take over, they can't do this anymore. We take over their life, we take over their decision making and every aspect of their life. And so that is a person that's going through this dementia, like any one of us would feel really, really meaningless. I mean, what's the point of being alive when people come and decide for you and basically take over your life? So we want to know about their abilities so that we can support them to be the best they can be. We want to know what are their interests. We want to know what are their skills. So we look at the construction of people living with dementia as zombies. Yeah, so these are actually books that and look at the title of the books: Alzheimer's Disease, Coping with a Living Death. The Living Death, Alzheimer's in America. And zombies are not something that we admire. Zombie is like really yucky stuff, you know. It's nothing like, we talk about Dracula, it's still very sexy. It's something that it's very, you know, we have romance and they have superpower and all that. But zombie are something that is so horrible. That's something that we do not want to associate with, right? And so they look at the language that we use. And these are actually medical journals. And look at the journals that we use. Relatives, the title of the literature itself, Relatives of the Living Dead. And this from the Journal of Medical Ethics. And another one, I look at it, is like, you know, Right of the Living Dead. These are all medical journals, right? And also we have nursing journals, and we call it Hospice Care for the Living Dead. Beyond Appearances, Caring in the Land of the Living Dead. So when we look at it, our construction, whether it is in the media, whether it is in the health community, in the hospital, in the journals, academic journals, books, etc., it is a very negative narrative when it comes to dementia. And that is why we have this heavy stigma of dementia. So we talk about stigma. There is self-stigma. If I'm diagnosed to have dementia, I will then internalize it because I have dementia, and this happens so often. My people living with dementia and their families usually hide it from their loved ones, they hide it from the community, they hide it from their faith community because of this stigma. They will not openly share that my mother is now diagnosed with dementia or my dad has got dementia. It is something that they try to avoid sharing as much as they can because of the stigma. So there is this self-stigma that's on myself, there's public stigma, and that is negative behaviors directed on the person with dementia, and a courtesy stigma. Okay, these are the stigma directed to a family or people who are close, and a lot of them are being avoided. A lot of people come to me and say that as soon as they're being diagnosed with this dementia, their families and their friends and their social circles really shrink because people shun away from them, probably because they do not know how to react to them, do not know how to communicate with them, that now they are going through changes. So the greatest fear of all, it used to be cancer. And then you look at the percentage now, it is dementia. And this is in a literature, okay? So, and this is not only in the Western world. it is actually worldwide, right? So half of people are seeking a dementia diagnosis because it is the most feared health condition, not only in UK, in Malaysia. Now the ADFM, the Alzheimer's Disease Foundation Malaysia, they kind of have a estimate that the now we have the total cases of dementia about 200 to 300,000. And I believe that it is utterly underrepresented, because a lot of people, when they call me, and even they have all the signs and symptoms, they do not want to see the doctor. Either the families do not want to bring them to see the doctor, or they themselves do not want to seek treatment because of the stigma. So what? So what if I have dementia? It is progressive, it's going to be fatal, and there is this decline. People think I'm stupid, people think I'm zombie, people take over my lives. I'd rather not be diagnosed. So there is this tragedy narrative, because we use the lost model. It's so dehumanizing, we stigmatize them, and we shame people living with dementia together with their loved ones. And one of the negative impact is social isolation. I was telling you about my friend as I started my sharing, Charlie, and when he was diagnosed with dementia, Alzheimer's, immediately he stopped dancing. And it's not because of dementia. And he isolates himself because he feels that now I will not be able to meet people's expectations. We distinguish between them and us just because of their cognitive changes. So the persons with dementia are amongst the most stigmatized around the world because of the negative narratives that we use. Now we can see just now the academic literature, the healthcare literature, public. If you just Google dementia, you will see all sorts of we just under pictures we Google, and the pictures that we see, we can see the brain decaying, a person is a living dead or a zombie, they are empty, and all these are very negative presentations of people living with dementia, right? They convey a lot of loss, they are doomed, they are living dead. And I just want to show this example, and this was actually a talk in August last year, okay? This is a talk on dementia. Look at the image. Even though when we want to try to bring awareness, right, to talk about dementia, the image that we share is not, it's really scary, it's really very negative. And we all know Robin Williams, who experienced dementia, Lewy body type of dementia, and it's got abundant resources, well known, and has all the access to the elite medical care, and his dementia went undiagnosed. So it continued to be one of the most misunderstood and the stigmatized health condition. Kristen Bryden is an advocate and activist. She's an Australian. She wrote this very powerful book, Who Will I Be When I Die? That's her first book. And she wrote this book after she's been diagnosed with dementia. And her neurologist at that time informed her that about 5 years from now, you will be demented. And a few years after this, you'll be in a nursing home until you die. And that was the kind of remark and support that she experienced when she was diagnosed with dementia. And she took the challenge and she decided that she's going to talk about it. She's going to be an advocate, and she continued on and she received her PhD. And she is now very well known, and she wrote several books after that. Another person living with dementia, Kate is also an Australian in Adelaide, and I very profound. She said dementia is the only illness she knows where people are told to go home. And she coined the term prescribed disengagement. And so she says that it's a systemic and gross underestimation of the capacity of all the people living with dementia and disability. So this is actually a friend of mine Her name is Irene, and I had a few sessions with her. Now, Irene is a living example of somebody living to the fullest in spite of dementia. Irene is diagnosed to have vascular type of dementia. And this is what I mean, that if we can focus on what she can still do, she is now, if you look at her, she's doing pottery, and she is using, she is into arts, she's creating arts, and she's expressing herself through arts, creative arts. Yeah, and so we need to focus on supporting people, not only on their deficits, but on what they can still do, on their interests, on their strength. So Irene last year, as she turned 30, she decided to hold an arts exhibition of all her products and all that her art, her creations. Yeah, this is her art teacher, and this is one of her art pieces. And she called this, and every art has got a meaning, you know, every art is an expression. Sometimes she's so angry, sometimes she's so frustrated, sometimes she's happy, sometimes she's time traveling, yeah, sometimes she's confused, sometimes she's disorientated, and all the pieces. So this is my favorite piece that she shared, and she called this piece the broken plate. And you can see, and when she was actually creating this plate, and when she colored it, the plate fell, and it broke into two, you know, and she was so devastated. And she was telling us, this broken plate is like my brain. This is how I feel like, you know, I feel like my brain is sometimes broken into pieces. And so Eddie said, okay, so what are we going to do about it? You know, and the next day she decided that she's going to put in some flowers and some colors, and she decorated it. And she says, I'm going to leave my best with my broken brain. So this speaks volume. And recently I have this amazing opportunity with this team from Japan. You know, I've been working with them for the past 1 year, since last year. And in Japan, they call it Totsu dance. It's a creative arts as a therapeutic dementia therapy. And they use this, and you can see this person here. His name is Osamu Jario. He is a professional dancer. He is also a professor in the University of Tokyo in Japan, where he teaches creative dancing and creative arts. And he has been using dance therapy as a means of communication to people with different disability, you know, from people with cerebral palsy to children with special needs. And later on, he began to experiment it with the people living with dementia, and he went into facilities. That was before the pandemic. He went to facilities in Japan, where he used dance to connect with people in very, very advanced dementia. So this is a workshop that we did in Ipoh, and it was live. So you can see here, we did live with, this is from this person living with dementia, is from Tokyo, and he was having a session with her, and together with Irene. Irene, just now I showed you, the person living with dementia who had a showcase exhibition, and we're doing live. And at that moment, we could connect a person. There's no language. This Japanese lady had absolutely no ability to speak anymore, because she's quite advanced in her dementia. And Irene, and obviously they don't have any language in common either, but they were able to connect and engage during this workshop. It was an amazing experience. Yeah. So that is one example of how if we can look at a person beyond the cognitive ability or disability, and we look at a person, we can look at how we can still connect at the person as a person. Yeah. So this is a term that we use very, very widely in the dementia world by professionals. Okay, I think a lot of you know this. We call it the behavioral and psychological symptoms of behavior. And we used to think that this is because of the pathology of the dementia. And the new thinking is that only 10% may be due to the pathology. And the others exhibit this, we call challenging behavior, because of their unmet needs, whether they are trying to tell us about their pain, their hunger, boredom, etc., all the needs. And they now have a different way because they are challenged, they're not able to articulate, they're not able to use language or words. Now they're using whatever means they have to communicate with us about their distress. And instead of understanding them, we kind of slap a label on them, and we kind of pathologize the whole behavior. So the problem with this term is that it kind of relegates a person's expression. We ignore the environment, we ignore the history, we pathologize normal expression. I read an article about it in the news, in the media, and I'll show it later. Okay, so we kind of slap a label, and sometimes we kind of use a lot of chemical restraint and also physical restraint, because what else can we do? It is because when we decide that it is because of dementia, and we expect that a person would be aggressive because of dementia, a person would wander because of dementia, a person would be physically mishandling you because of dementia, then there is the end of it. That because there's nothing you can do, is because of dementia, we can't help it, you have to expect it. Then that's what I mean by we kind of pathologize it, right? And I wrote about this in several newspapers. And I wrote this because I was so mad because of a friend of mine. He's a very, very mild, gentle, sweetest person that I know. This is a case of husband and wife. It's a very sad story. Husband and wife, both in their late 70s. Husband is living with Alzheimer's type of dementia. And they have one son, but the son is living abroad in Switzerland. This is very, very common. This scenario is very common. And wife just recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's. Yeah. So as the dementia progresses, she could not cope, obviously, because she herself is struggling with Parkinson's. And so she has to find a facility to support him. And obviously, because he's been independent and, he has been by himself all the while, now he has to be relocated to a facility with 100 over people in a building. And when we suddenly have to share a room with 6 other people, obviously he was very confused. He was very irritated. He wanted to go home. He talks to himself. And when people ignore him and ignore his distress, he becomes louder. And they call him being, misbehave or refusing treatment, because he refused to eat, he refused bathe and all that. And subsequently, he was restrained because he wanted to go back. And that made me write a lot and start this movement, to encourage us to kind of rethink and reimagine dementia. If we were to be put in a situation where we are locked into a room, where people decide on when to eat, what to eat, when to bathe, what clothes to wear, who are we going to sleep with, what time we sleep, what time we should get up, when should we bathe, how do we bathe, who bathes us, how are we going to strip naked in front of a total stranger? Would we be okay with it? Do we expect people to be okay with it just because they have dementia? If the same thing were to happen to us, would we just be very quiet and be obedient and accept care? Why is it that it is so unusual if people were to be very uncomfortable with all this? It's not rocket science, I wonder. So this is a real story, and I think this is also a very powerful story, and I call it In a Birthday Suit. This is a friend of mine in 70s, yeah, living with also Alzheimer's. He's from Ipoh. And he lived with his wife also, and his son lives in KL, son and daughter in KL. So one day, he likes to, okay, so this person, I will call him Charles again. Charles, if you understand his history, Charles retired, he's a retired accountant. And after retirement, he likes to go in Ipoh at about 3 or 4 o'clock. You like to go to the kopitiam and you hang out with your buddies and you kind of talk about politics and you condemn all the politics and politicians and policies, and you have your yam cha, you know, means drink tea, literally translation. You drink tea, you yam cha with your friends, and you kind of, you know, criticize the government and how bad they are and all that. And that is his daily routine. Okay, even when he has dementia, that becomes something that he is used to. So at a certain time, he automatically was, okay, it's time to go and yam cha, right? So at that time, the children are not very comfortable because there was one episode where he went out and he lost his way, and his neighbor had to bring him back. So they were very embarrassed and they were not comfortable. So they decided that, okay, Dad is not going out anymore and we're going to lock him in. So they padlock him and he's not able to get out. So one day they were having a bath, you know, he took a shower. And in Malaysia, and the weather is how we all wear sarong. Okay, so in Malaysia, when the gentlemen wear sarong, it's very normal that we wear sarong without any undies, right? Because it's very comfortable and it's very cooling. And so Charlie was wearing his sarong, and his wife was helping him. And when he get out, he managed to slip out. And because he went out outside, and he actually literally climbed over the fence. He climbed over the fence to get out because they wouldn't want to open the gate. He couldn't open the gate. So he very cleverly, very skillfully managed to climb over the fence, and his sarong slipped out. And so he was now very happy because he wanted to go out. He wanted to explore the environment. So he was happily outside the house, and he is stark naked now. It's not weird, it's no big deal. I'm enjoying the cool air, and he's walking around outside his house. And the wife was shocked and nervous and didn't know what to do. So the wife called the son, and the son called the cousins. By then, he was already having time of his life. He's walking around, enjoying the breeze, enjoying the trees, the clouds, whatever, the nature. And so the cousins came, that means his nephews, and came and would try to capture him, you know, and he was like, at this time, he was minding his own business. He was not disturbing anyone. He was just enjoying himself, you know, he's having a time of his life. And then these people came, and by then there was a pool of crowd. More people were gathered around him. But by now, he became very anxious. He was crouching down on the floor, and he's beginning to tell people to go away, leave me alone, as people are trying to coax him, and his nephew and his are trying to coax him to get into the car. Now he became very disorientated, and now he's shouting, going away, and then he began to pick whatever stones and he could find and all that, and began throwing it at them. What was he doing? He's trying to protect himself, because it's actually very scared that people are trying to crowd him and tell him, cool down, go home, you know. And he's now very, very confused, and he was shouting for help, and he was not shouting, he was telling, go away, leave me alone. And then so they did not know what to do. They were going to call the police. Then the wife called me, because I'm a friend. The wife called me, and I happened to be in Ipoh at that time, and I know where they stay. So I went to their Taman, and they gave me exactly where he was. And I went there, And the first thing I did was I was actually pretty mad. I didn't really have to act. I was pretty mad because they were scaring him off, and some of them were even taking pictures, some were video recording to upload it into the social media and try to get as many hits as possible. Instead of helpful, they were the least helpful. So he was so scared. He was on the ground and I could see him so scared. So when I went, because I have been in the world of dementia for some time and I have this experience, so I brought with me certain essentials. So when I went there, I saw him and I immediately told everybody to leave him alone. And I shouted at everybody and I demanded that everybody leave him alone and that I will handle it. Okay, so everybody left and it was just me and him. And I squat down and I said, you must be very scared. These people, terrible people, don't worry. I said, and when he saw me on his side, when he saw me scolding them, he saw me chasing them away, then he felt that now there's somebody on my side. I don't have to defend myself anymore. There's somebody who is defending me. Now I'm on his team. I'm his ally. Right? And that gives him a sense of security. And I sat down with him. He was stark naked and I was comfortable with his nudity. I was no problem. And I sat down and I said to him, do you want a piece of chocolate? I took with me a chocolate. So I told you I bring my essentials. And that's it. And I broke it and I gave him half and I took half and I was eating chocolate and he was eating chocolate. And I took with me 2 blankets. Yeah. And I took with me 2 blankets and I took the 1 blanket and I covered myself. And I said, no, it's a bit chilly, isn't it? It's very cold. And I covered myself. Are you feeling cold? And he looked at me and he nodded. And I gave him the blanket and he covered himself. I don't have to cover him. He just copied me and I covered myself. I gave him a blanket. He covered himself. Both of us are sitting down, eating our chocolate. And we're talking about the leaf. We're talking about the clouds. Nothing about him being naked. Nothing about going back. I was just being in the moment with him. I was just engaging with him, connecting with him. I was just appreciate him being a human at that moment, going into his world. And instead of expecting him to do something that we know he cannot do, somebody with the brain changes, we know cannot do, right? Do we expect a toddler to be able to understand us when we tell them certain things? No. So we know that a person living with dementia would have brain changes. We would then expect ourselves to change instead of them. We are the one with the functioning brain. More often, we do the opposite. So then when he's okay with it, we started to eat chocolate and now chocolate finished. And I said, Charlie, chocolate finished. Shall we go and get some more? And yeah, he says, yeah, okay. Then I said, let's go. And he went with me. No need to coax him. There is no demand. There's no threat. We were just, I held up to his hand. We went to my car and then we drove back to his house. And then we had dinner and that was it. So this is a real example of when we change everything, there's no behavioral changes. I don't have to sedate him. I don't have to restrain him. I don't have to call the police and the ambulance and all that. I just need to enter his world and understand where he's coming from and understand his distress. This is another story that happened in a facility, in a nursing home. And they used to call me and they said, no, okay, Cecilia, I have one person, my client, refused to bathe for 1 month. Every time we want to bathe him, he'll fight with us. She will scold us. She will throw things at us and all that. And it's such a, we have to have and this happens all the time, not in nursing home. So the people in the relatives also tell me the story. And it's like, it's impossible to bathe, something about that. And to explain why a person refused bathe, it takes me another day. So I'm just going to give a very short snapshot. And so I said, how do you bathe? I said, we have to tie them up. We have to restrain with the 6 of us, have to, bring her to the wheelchair and tie her, and of course, that itself is so scary. If 6 people have to tie me down to bring me to the shower, and strip me naked and all that, would I be willing to go and bathe? So I said, okay, fine, I'm going to see her. So she's a Nyonya and I'm also a Nyonya, you know. So, and I said, okay, so we talk about our Nyonya cuisine, our food and all that. And I just tried it and I said, you know, when I was young, my grandmother used to make me have this santan on my hair, and I have to have the hair mask and I have to leave it on for an hour and all it. And she said, yeah, it's very good for you, you know, you should do this. And I was saying, you know, my hair are falling, what do you think? Yeah, you should do that, you know, it really helps. And I said, okay, I'm going to do that. And I said, but what do I do after that? Then she says, no, you have to, you know, wash it. And I said, maybe you can help me, show me how to do it. You know, how do you put a hair mask and how you wash it? Could you show it? Could we go to the toilet so that you can show it? And she says, no, I cannot go to the toilet. I cannot go to the toilet. I'm very scared to go to the bathroom and the toilet. And I say, why? Why is it? There's somebody there in the toilet, always staring at me. And I said, there's somebody there. Yeah, I says, you know, there is, and I'm so scared. He's always looking at me and he looks so scary, a stranger. And I said, can you describe him? Describe her to me. And she said, yeah, somebody with the white hair and, you know, some losing teeth and all the wrinkle up looking at me, you know, and it's always staring at me. So I later went to the bathroom. And when I opened the door to the bathroom, when you open the bathroom, immediately in front of the sink, you see a mirror. So then I understand that in her mind, in this person's mind, she is in her 20s. She's a young, beautiful, attractive looking lady. So in her mind, as she time travels, if you're 20 years old and you look at the mirror and your brain is telling you, who the heck is this old lady, and she's weak and wrinkled and ugly and staring at me, she's so fierce looking, and it's so scary for me to go, and I don't want to go. And that's the mystery being solved. And I said, okay, I know the problem. Remove the mirror. So they removed the mirror, and I told her, I have made a report and I have sounded it to the police and the security, and I will go with you. If the stranger is there, we will capture her, right? Don't worry, I come with you and let's go and see. So she went with me when there was no mirror. No problem. We could go together, we could shower, sing some songs together, shower together, come on. No problem. Again, it is entering into the world, understanding the person beyond the dementia. If I look at her and say, oh, yeah, it's because dementia lah. So she's like that one. All dementia people are like, all dementia patients. That's what they call it. Dementia patients, demented people. That's another label we use. Demented people are like that. We expect them. This is expected. So when we expect, there's nothing we can do, right? But when we think, okay, we try to understand, why does a person behave? Why is it behaving like this? We try to get curious and we try to investigate. Then we understand, oh, this is what the person is going through, and we resolve the problem. That's no issue. So, and I like Dr. Alan Powell. Dr. Alan is another physician, geriatrician. He's also an American, and he is also a dementia advocate and activist. And I love his definition of dementia. And he defined dementia as a shift in a way a person experiences the world around him or her. And Alan also wrote a lot of very interesting books. And I like this is because when we change our definition of dementia into this, when we think that dementia, it is the way a person experiences her world or his world, there is a shift. Their experiences change depending on the person. Then we change our focus from pathologizing them, from stigmatizing them, labeling them, to trying to seek to understand a person's reality, like the two examples that I gave earlier on. So now our goal is now shifted to, we try to create a well-being, a sense of well-being. And now question now is, what gives you a sense of well-being? And it is again depending on the person. Each person is different, you know. What we do always is we homogenize it. We thought that it's all the same. But like us, a person with dementia is a person first, and each person is different. Yeah, and I did this with Reimagining Dementia Malaysia with the Reimagining Dementia Coalition in America. And this is a video that I'd like to share.
You and I are like trees in the forest, equal and strong in any weather. Joy in the sunshine, bow and bend with the rain. Our roots grow together, we are like birds of a feather. You lead and I lead, we get there together. You hear my song, you sing along and we fly. It's a new day, it's a new way. It's a new day, it's a new way. Let's reimagine. It's a bold day, let's create a world where everyone can thrive. A together day where the joy of one is the joy of all alive. It's a fearless day, it's a hopeful way, let's reimagine. Mari baharu kita hasilkan dunia untuk semua. Satu hari di mana semua berkongsi kebahagiaan. Sentiasa berani penuh harapan kita bayangkan. We are like flowers that stand our garden. Given the space, we all can blossom. Different ability, gorgeous diversity grows. We try together, we are the change that is needed. Come join the change as we see it. Mari kita cubalah bayangkan dunia kita yang penuh harapan. We are the change that is needed. Come join the change as we see it. Mari kita cubalah bayangkan dunia kita yang penuh harapan. It's a bold day, let's create a world where everyone can thrive. A together day where the joy of one is the joy of all alive. It's a fearless day, it's a hopeful way, let's reimagine. Mari baharu kita hasilkan dunia untuk semua. Satu hari di mana semua berkongsi kebahagiaan. Sentiasa berani penuh harapan kita bayangkan. Sentiasa berani penuh harapan kita bayangkan.
Yeah, and that was sorry. So that was the campaign that we launched last year, and our American partners were very impressed because we are the first country, Malaysia, to take up this courage to come up with this video. And this video are supported by people living with dementia, you could see, and their family members, and also people from all walks of life who wanted to support us to reimagine dementia. And we did this with artists, people who are the singers are from the Perak Performing Arts Society, and the musicians are from the Performing Arts, and we have students from University Science Malaysia, people from all walks of life, and we did it at zero fund, and people were all coming to support us. So I was very motivated that there are still people who wants to join in our cause to reimagine dementia. So my hope is that when I started this talk, I talked about Charlie, who decided that he is going to stop dancing because he's got dementia now, because he's afraid that he is not able to dance the way people expect him to dance. So my hope is that we will create a place where everyone can dance freely the way they want to be. And so this is a person living with dementia, and that is me dancing with them. The rest of them are all people. And here we are doing the twist. So with that, I hope that we all can take this courage to reimagine dementia. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cecilia, for the heartfelt sharing. We all now have a better understanding about dementia. For participants, a reminder, you can type in your questions for Dr. Cecilia by scanning the QR code that is displayed on the screen right now. There's also a Slido QR link in the chat box. You can click that, type in your questions as well. Without further ado, we will be addressing all questions later on at the end of the session. With that, we will now move on to our next sharing. I'd like to invite Dr. Lim once again to introduce our second guest speaker for today.
Thank you, Letitia. I will now like to invite my colleague, Associate Professor Dr. Somanathan Menon, who's a general surgeon and a professor of surgery at Taylor School of Medicine. He has an active interest in palliative care and is involved with hospice Glang. He has personal experience of being a caregiver to a loved one with dementia, and he has very kindly agreed to share his own experience of this. Welcome, Professor Menon.
Hi, thank you. Good evening and a happy new year to all of you all. And thanks to Dr. Cecilia, Dr. Lim, and Dr. Anthony and the rest for having given me an opportunity to speak here about my personal experiences. Well, it's a great thank you to Dr. Cecilia for a wonderful and it was a very informative talk on how dementia has to be reimagined and tackled. And I think she very rightly has, from what that, I think she brought about the Dr. Helen Powell's explanation about a definition of a shift in the way a person experiences the world around him or her. I think the old dementia, how they describe it is just an impairment to remember and think, and that interferes in your activities. So again, where she said that it is a very grossly misunderstood and stigmatized disease. There's nothing much except, from what I gather from what she says, the caring, going out to the people and improving their quality of life. And that brings everyone, or brings me to the topic on which I'm talking today, about my personal experience of taking care of my mother, who has got dementia. Okay. And before I go into any further things, I would like to give a short clinical history about her. She's about 90 years old now. And for the last 5 to 6 years, she has been encountering this problem, which has gradually set in, but it has sort of accelerated itself over the last couple of years. And now she is bedridden. It is actually, you know, as far as I am concerned, I am not only a caregiver. I wear 3 hats at the same time. I'm a caregiver, I am her eldest son, and I'm also a doctor. And combine which, it becomes a rather complex atmosphere for me, an environment for myself. Okay, she is 90 years old now, but my mother, she was a very active woman. Though she doesn't go out and drive car and all that. Very active at home, maintains the house, wonderful cook. You know, she sits and reads books, reads newspaper. Without reading a newspaper, it doesn't start a day. She starts off a day with a lengthy session of prayers, and she cooks. She fends for herself. She's very, very concerned about her, how she looks. She doesn't like even a strand of hair to be out of place. She was in that kind of a situation. But then we started noticing nuances in her daily habits. She started becoming a little bit more aggressive. She started losing interest in reading newspapers. She used to be a keen follower of the CNN news, and she could tell us what is the news going around the world. And she started losing interest, and she started losing even interest in the thing that she was very happy to do all the time, her daily prayers. She was not interested. And then we realized that there is something getting along. And soon, as time went along, we realized we met some geriatricians, and finally they diagnosed that she was having dementia. Okay, so now she's bedridden, and she is unable to remember, and cannot remember past things. She can't communicate. She can communicate, but not sensibly at times. But certain times she comes back into life. She suddenly sparkles. Like yesterday, you know, there was her grandchildren were around, and she was all dynamic, smiling. Okay, but on another occasion, even with them around, she's completely blank. Okay, so as I told you, my role as a caregiver, I am tied up with her. Of course, I am a son, but I'm also a doctor. So the first question is it easy? A lot of people have asked me, is it easy for you to be a caregiver all time? Well, it's not a very easy question to answer, because indeed it is no picnic. It is not a picnic at all. It's an all-time job. And just before I go any further, this narrative is all about my personal experience, and it could differ from person to person. So it's entirely personal. All right. So the question is it easy? Well, it definitely not. Even though she is my mother, it is not. I should say that the person who is supporting me, I'm not alone in this support, because I got my wife. My wife is ever supporting me, taking care of mother. And actually, she is the one who has borne the brunt of the whole the caregiver role. And of course, now we have got somebody to help us, because it's not very easy to go do it just by both of us, because I go to work and she's alone. Okay, I cannot. It is very demanding and challenging, because number one, it can be very, very frustrating, because from a son's point of view, as a caregiver, whatever you do, we don't see much of a change in her, in the response. She seems to be just at times stagnant, sometimes going worse. And so it is indeed frustrating. Of course, we sit with her, we talk with her, like what Dr. Cecilia mentioned, connection. Yes, we do try to connect. We put for her songs, we sit around her, talk to her, we try to bring her, draw her out into conversation. But she is now probably going into more than moderate levels. And it is indeed frustrating. From one side, as a doctor, I know what is the cause, but then again, that thing about being a son comes in, and it pains you that Nothing is changing. It is just status quo. And it is indeed, it is indeed very, it can also drain your physical, it can also be a physical strain on you. It can be time consuming. And supporting her, because as I said, she's bedridden, supporting her, turning around and all that, it can be, though we have got physical appliances, still sometimes you get some strained muscles and all that, which is part and parcel of our duties, because we got to shift for her ablutions and her bath and all that. So it is indeed very, very physically tiring. Okay. And yes, it is very stressful because there are a lot of changes in her behavior. She doesn't sleep. She doesn't sleep in the morning. She doesn't sleep in night. She's just keeping on calling, disturbing, so there's no sleep. And that is definitely I feel that it could be stressful. Okay. And the relations with this stress can be again imparted. It can stress up family relationship. Your own siblings, they can come and comment, which can be, it can really strain relationship. Okay. So all these are part and parcel, I feel, of this caregiving. And of course, social activity is basically a zero. There is practically no time for entertainment. There is absolutely no time because we can't go out. We are stuck at home, and because we got to get somebody who has to be here to take care of my mother. And of course, on top of everything else, your emotions are take a beating. I feel angry at times. I feel depressed. I get depressed, I get irritated, and there's no, what should I say? There's no end to it. It keeps on coming and going, but since it's my mother, I feel that this is all circumventable. This is the son talking now, okay, as a caregiver, okay? So all these problems are always there. And last but not least, it can bite into your finances if you don't have the financial resources. All right. So with all these problems that we face every day, I got a lot of people who ask me, why do you need to go ahead and why do you need to suffer this trauma? Why don't you just send her to a nursing home or into a home where they take care of all these old people? But as for me, again, as I said, it is my personal thing. I think it is, I don't agree to it. It is a big no. Because if I put my mother into a nursing home, maybe the best nursing home that's available, you might be able to give her the best physical attention. You might be able to give her best nursing care there. But one thing that I feel, and I think many would agree, would you be able to take care of her emotional needs? Because as I see her, I see that within that blank look she gives most of the time, as if she doesn't exist, I always detect a spark, a kind of a flame within her that is keeping on burning. And I feel if you send her to a nursing home, you'll snuff that out because that particular fuel is not there. That fuel is, she is where she is. She is in her environment, her home, with people whom she loves, she knows around her. Because like I said, sometimes when you go and talk to her, she can give you the sweetest smile ever. And she can even ask you, have you eaten? You know, as a mother always asks. Okay, so this is something which I don't really agree. Again, my own this is my own understanding. Because at the end of the day, we realize that life is not always supposed to be sweet. There's always sweetness, there's always bitterness, and it's a combination of all. And at times now, I don't mind chewing the bitter part of it because it's my mother. Because my mother has brought me up through all the pains and all the difficulties to what I am today. So I think this is a service. I feel it is a God's gift, a gift to me to serve my mother. And last but not least, being a spiritual person, I think it also gives me a spiritual reward. That's it. Thank you very much for hearing, and have a great year ahead. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Prof. Somanathan, for the heartfelt sharing. Dear participants, you can now type in your questions for Prof. Soma by scanning the QR code that is being displayed on the screen right now. Or you can even type in your questions by clicking the Slido link that is sent to you in the chat box. We will now start with our Q&A sessions. All questions will be displayed on the screen in a short while. We will wait for 1 minute to collect all questions.
Thanks, Letitia. Just a gentle reminder to the audience to please keep the questions relevant to Dr. Cecilia and Prof. Soma's talks today. Thank you.
Okay. So I'd like to invite Dr. Lim for this session now.
Okay. Thanks, Letitia. Before I move on, thanks to Dr. Cecilia again for what I felt was a very refreshing and thought-provoking talk. And your advocacy work is truly impressive. And to Prof. Soma as well for sharing your thoughts and very personal experience with your mother. We'll take some questions from the audience. I suppose we have to be reminded that a lot of members of the audience are not healthcare providers. So I guess we will try and answer, some of the I can see that some of the basic questions about dementia have come up. Yeah. What can we do to reduce the risk of developing dementia? So this is, although slightly digressing away from the topic, I think people are curious and interested. And I wondered if, Dr. Cecilia might have had this question thrown at her many times. So what do you tell people, when they sort of come to you with this?
Yes, thank you. And I think this is a very important question that because right now there is an increased percentage numbers of people living with dementia, especially as we are living longer. And the cohort of the older people are on the increase, so the dementia is also on the increase. And right now, we realize that there are things there are factors that we can't do anything about, like our genetic factors, and that is something that we can't do. But there are also a lot of risk modifying things that we can do that is related to our lifestyle, you see. So I think there are a lot of research done, and I could share it later, a lot of research done that indicates that we can actually reduce our risk substantially if we can modify our lifestyle. Basically, it is physical activities, that is exercise. And basically, because I think the crux of the thing, I read an article which is very, very simple and makes a lot of sense, that simply say what is good for the heart is good for the brain, right? Because our brain depends on our heart and the nutrition and the oxygen to function. Yeah. So what is good for the heart is good for the brain. Basically, physical activity is very important. We have been encouraged not to live a sedentary lifestyle, to exercise enough, at least 3 times a week. And of course, it's also our dietary intake. Yes, we have been, many studies have shown that there are benefits of a Mediterranean kind of food diet that is both based on low fat, animal fat, and more on fruits and vegetables, and eliminate processed food as much as possible, and also things like reduce alcohol consumption. There's another risk associated with dementia, kind of damages our brain cells. And absolutely smoking. Obviously, smoking is a big risk factor to brain damages. And also basically that's it. Actually, our lifestyle, we can actually do, we have enough sleep, we get ourselves socially active, we learn new things, make what we don't use, we lose. So make use of our brain. And then that is an important element to this, because a lot of people tell me, I know Sudoku is good, Sudoku is good. I read this something, I read somewhere in some kind of article or TikTok or Twitter or something, Facebook, that Sudoku is good, or crossword puzzle is good, or coloring. Now there is a Zen color and Zen Tangle, or all sorts of, I buy all the coloring books, and my mother refused, which is so stubborn, and then there's a fight, and I was like, yeah, but then stress is also one of the risk factors when it comes to dementia. So if people like me, and then if I have slight cognitive changes and I have got slight cognitive decline, and then my son would force me, Mom, you must do Sudoku, and I hate maths, and I hate numbers, and I hate number crunching. And now you force me to do that, I get very stressed. And I think that is very negative. So it must be something that I enjoy doing, something that I would love. Maybe I like to learn new language, or I would like to learn new musical instrument, or new games, or a new dance, something that I delight in. It cannot be something that you force onto me that I hate. So that is something that we need to bear in mind. Yeah, I hope I answer your question.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, Dr. Cecilia. In fact, there's very good and a lot of evidence supporting the Mediterranean diet. Yeah, so cardiovascular and cerebrovascular disease, brain health. Just a reminder that actually what we do is what when we start doing these things is important. There's no point changing your diet suddenly at the age of 70 thinking, I don't want to get dementia. Changes to the brain in dementia happen very, very early, even before middle age. So it's actually something we have to actively think about while we're still young and healthy. So these changes we have to sustain for decades before we actually reach the age where our risk is higher. That's great. I think the great one is what I've seen a lot of evidence for sort of learning new things. I think that's a really good one as well. I think it's related to forming new brain networks. Yeah, the more you learn something new, the more new connections you get. Yeah, new neuronal connections. I think that's great. Maybe Sudoku is a little bit challenging, but I'm not good at that. So I don't know who actually enjoys Sudoku.
Or even crossword puzzles and all that. There are a lot of difficult ones.
Yeah.
Jigsaw puzzles, I think, is another good exercise for the brain.
It is. But I think a great one would be dancing. Actually, I think there's no reason why you can't learn a new dance move. at any age. And you are creating new neuronal connections. Yeah, it's a physical activity as well. And you're using a lot of learning to learn a new type of dance. And I think it's great fun and it's social. So I really enjoyed seeing the videos of people dancing that Dr. Cecilia showed. So that's actually a pretty good one. Okay. Thanks. Let's move on. Treatment. So, well, the talk today isn't really focusing on the medical side of things. Yeah, so we're trying to cater to the living side of dementia. So, if you don't mind, I'll slightly maybe reword this question, isn't it? I'm aware that, well, pharmacological treatments are also very limited. We're all aware of that, but we're also quite limited in terms of good, evidence-based, non-pharmacological interventions, for improving the cognition dementia. What programs do we have in Malaysia that patients can access? Non-pharmacological interventions, with good evidence for cognitive improvement. Dr. Cecilia?
So I would just like to stress on the point that I think a lot of focus is on cognitive impairment and how to improve cognitive impairment. And I would like to kind of try to maybe introduce terms like improve the quality of life of people living with dementia. Because in my experience, even though at a very, very advanced stage, and I have one gentleman who unfortunately was being physically restrained because he was trying to pull out his Rouse tube and his IV and all that. So all his limbs were being restrained tight to the bed. And he was very agitated. And obviously, I mean, I would be too. I mean, if you kind of tie me up and then you stick things all over me, I would be agitated as well. And he was like wanting to go home. And as I kind of removed one of the restraint and held his hand, and he says, and he was very annoyed at first. It's like, what are you trying to do? I'm like, I'm helping. I said, holding your hand makes me feel good. It makes me feel very secure. And he just stopped at a while, and then he just relaxed. And because I know him, he's a very caring, very, very caring, protective kind of man. And even that he was being tied down at this extreme, he was still wanting to protect me, so that is a very innate nature of human being. If you understand a person, and each person is different. So I know my persons very deeply. So I think it is more on having a good quality of life beyond whether you are able to be cognitively intellectual or whether there's a cognitive decline. A lot of them are my clients, my friends living with dementia were big time directors of a certain company. They were lawyers. Some of them were physicians and medical directors of an established hospital even. So the thing is, the problem we do is that we kind of select everyone with dementia with one. Okay, so then now you have dementia, you're stupid. Okay, everybody with dementia, whether you were a housewife or you were a doctor, lawyer, everybody is stupid, and now we treat you like you are a stupid person. So then everybody, either you kind of do, then so they ask them to do something so ridiculous as 2 + 2 = maths. It's like, I mean, come on, he's a physician, for goodness sake. He's not stupid, he's got dementia, he's got Alzheimer's. And I was trying to relate with him. And so I'm just trying to give it the answer through an example. Yeah. So this person, if you know his medical background, he's a physician, he is a managing director, a medical director of a very big, renowned hospital, a private hospital. And you go and reduce him to ask him to do a simple mathematics problem solving. I mean, that is like, he was like, you don't think I'm stupid. I'm not, obviously, I would agree with him, Dato. And I was like, Dato. So when I asked my team, a young girl to go, and this is, I said, all I want you to do is to connect with him. You just have to connect with him, and you use your creativity and connect with him. She went there and she spoke to him and she connected, and she's a Teochew. This Dato is a Hokkien, so it's a different dialect. So he went and he says, can you speak Hokkien? And she says, no, Dato, I'm a Teochew, I speak Teochew. And this Dato, we know about him, and he loves food. He's a foodie, he loves traveling. So then they were talking, and they said, Dato, you used to go to Hong Kong. He said, I've never been to Hong Kong. So he went to Hong Kong, and then he said, what is good in Hong Kong? What kind of food? So he began to talk. So they began to talk about the noodles, the desserts, and all that, and then they began to engage. Okay, that is the social inclusion. When we're able to talk, we're able to engage, draws him out. He doesn't feel stupid anymore that people are testing him and see everyday test and see the assessment. Where are you at now? Today, are you cognitively declined? Are you and you put a label and you just kind of measure it. There's none of that. No, he doesn't feel threatened. He doesn't feel that he knows. He knows that people are checking on him every day to see what stage is he now every day. He has that capacity. And he feels insulted that's what we are doing to him, that we have reduced him into objectify him to just look at the dementia and not him. So when my team, my girl went and connect with him, and now he began to become who he is again. He is now the teacher again. He is now the teacher, the sifu again, because then he says, oh, you do not know Hokkien. I can teach you. I can teach you Hokkien. I'm a good teacher, So you come to me and out. So now the dynamics change. He is the boss, and this is the educator, and he is the learner. Now he doesn't feel threatened. So this is what I mean by, it's not really, it really depends on a person. So it is not like a one size fit all. You can't use this and say, okay, everybody do painting, everybody do this. It doesn't fit, So this particular physician, when the therapist or the nurse try to, and I said exercise is very important and all that. So he's like, suck 1, 2, and he was so agitated. I'm not a kid. Why are you treating me like a kid? So when we try to introduce physical activities, it really depends. And it is something that we do together rather than do two. So in my memory cafe, in my therapeutic centers and all that, when we do therapies together, physical therapies, it is hidden, like we do singing or we do dancing, we do sit down yoga and all sorts of exercise, and we do it together. We don't sit down and watch you do, we do it together. So it doesn't feel that we are objectifying them. And I hope that I'm answering your question in a non-direct way.
Oh, but I think your message is very loud and clear, Dr. Cecilia. And thank you so much for sort of, refocusing it. A lot of the members in the audience are also physicians, and I think doctors, as much as anyone else here, are often guilty of this. Yeah, we put a person with dementia into an ideological box, with what we expect them to be without knowing the person at all. Yeah, to feed our own expectations, rather than making an effort to understand them as a person with needs, with experiences, feelings, or memories. And that little story is actually very sad. One, where the patient was tied down in hospital and fed through a tube, on a liquid diet. They didn't understand what was going on with them. This is sadly a familiar sight in our hospitals in this day and age. On every ward, you will see a patient like this. How, this is my own question really, how far are we from, changing the way we manage people with dementia in our healthcare facilities? What needs to be done to change our long-standing practice? It's so ingrained, and we don't have the luxury of one-to-one nursing care in our public hospitals. So this happens. It is sad, and it affects me as well, seeing the people being treated this way.
Yep, that's a multi-million question. It breaks my heart. Yes, you're right, unfortunately. But when I share with my colleagues from Japan and my colleagues from America, when I kind of share my frustrations, when this happens, and I get very downtrodden, and I say, oh, I don't know what to do, and we are so behind, and I do not know even where to start. And so it is very reassuring that when they share with me that, Japan was also like that 10 years ago. At least you have to start somewhere. I mean, if you do one person and you change the life of one person, there is one person. So what I'm trying to do now to be an advocate, to coax everybody to try to reimagine dementia, to try to change the lens we use. If we use the biomedical lens, of course, then we would have to diminish a person to a diagnosis, to a dementia, to a brain failure, and would just look at the loss, But if we try to challenge ourselves to understand, I wonder what's going on. I wonder what he or she is experiencing with the kind of background, the history that she is, and step into their world and try to connect to them in their world, that would make a lot of difference. So we have conducted a lot of workshops to train healthcare facility operators. I think if you look at the nursing homes, aged care facilities, and we look at the cases that's there, more than 60 to 70% of their cases are people living with dementia. So they deal a lot, and unfortunately, they're not skilled, because if you do not have only alternatives, if you think that, okay, the first time every time when I said, I've got a person living with dementia, do you want this? The first thing that they ask me, Cecilia, is he aggressive or not? So they said, is this person, so the case aggressive or not? So it's like, okay, it's expected, that a person living with dementia would be aggressive. That is the expectation. They will beat you, they will slap you, they will resist care. So you kind of have that expectation at the back of the ground already, So when we try to now educate people, no, it is not because of that. It is more because of us. We irritate them, our approach, we take over their lives, we do things to them, we lock them out, and we isolate them, and they are trying to communicate their needs. And if we don't understand, then it will only escalate. So then I think it is a lot of teaching, a lot of bringing into awareness, and trying to challenge their views. It's no easy way, but we have to do it, I think, one step at a time. And I think there's a lot of this public awareness and programs. And people, when they come and try be in it, and when they text it, like a lot of them have problems, issues with bathing, especially with bathing. A lot of them have problems with bathing, and that's the reason why they resist bathing. So when they come and then they try it, and then they say, yeah, it really works. It really works. If you, instead of using 5 or 6 people to restrain a person, and we try this kind of approach, you don't need one-to-one, and it's easier for them, and then in the future it would be a more delightful, enjoyable activity, rather than something that's being coerced and forced. Yeah, so that's my answer. I'm not really sure I answered or not.
Oh, but it's absolutely clear. I think, Cecilia, we need you to be on an emergency call for all our hospitals. Advice accordingly. It is very important. I agree that the training and education of the care staff is crucial here. Okay, we do have to move on, otherwise we'll be here all day. One of the other question, second question on that list, what are the initial signs that a person is at the onset of dementia? Maybe from a personal experience, maybe Prof. Soma can give,
Okay, that as I said in the beginning, when a person, like my mom, she started, the first early signs we noticed was she started, there were changes in her daily activities, especially like I told you, she's one hell of a person who, one of the most important things which we noted from the beginning was, she was very active on the phone. She calls her friends every day. All her lady friends and her relatives, her sisters, every day. Then suddenly we started seeing changes like, oh, I'm not interested in calling. Oh, when we asked why you're not calling, no, we are not interested. And she showed signs of loss of interest in cooking and all that. So you can see, and the other thing is a mood. She becomes depressed without any reason, rhyme or reason. She becomes depressed and she becomes angry. she starts unnecessarily, she attacks us. And the other thing we noticed in her was, she's a very brave person. She can stay in a house alone. But when this thing started setting in, she used to really trouble us. When even we go to the shop for 10 minutes, she will start disturbing you. Why are you away? Why are you away? So the mood, and she will just put on a grumpy face and sit at home and do, you don't talk to us, don't want to eat. And then she'll come back on board again. So this is what, getting into anger, getting irritable. And one thing also we noticed was she started getting up early. Her sleep hours started changing. So there are so many factors which you can put in when you notice a person who is very normal and then showing subtle changes. I think you might have to think about dementia. This is from my personal, I'm not an expert. Actually, we got an expert like Dr. Cecilia there, and of course, Lim is neurology trained, and they would be able to probably enlighten us better than from a surgical concept. Because my contact with so-called caregiving is not only mother, because I'm also involved in palliative care medicine, but that is an entirely different change of pathology. So I think I would like Lim or Dr. Cecilia to further enhance give better answers.
Well, I think Professor Somanathan, you're downplaying, the importance of your experience. Is where we learn. So we learn from people like you. So we have to, this information we get from families. Yeah. So families will approach their physicians if they're afraid that their loved one's gone, change in the behavior. And you're absolutely right. So one of the earlier signs, or one of the earliest things that families will notice, they'll say, my dad's not himself. My mom isn't her usual self. Now, what often happens is that often they get misdiagnosed as depression. Not so much misdiagnosis, but depression coexists with dementia as well. But often people get so focused on this being solely a depression that they forget that actually, more would be going on with this person. So we rely, on people like yourself coming to us and telling us, and this is the first clue, and I absolutely agree. It's not always traditionally, the memory problem, that is one stereotype, but a lot of it is a change in that person, just a personality, behavior change. Yeah, I think Dr. Cecilia agrees as well. So she's seen so many. Okay. All right. Are we okay to move on to the next question? So that's, I think that's probably a bit for me. Why is there no cure for Alzheimer's or dementia as a whole? We've had, you're constantly hearing about laboratory breakthroughs, bench, but they never quite reach the bedside. Yeah, it is a difficult condition. Neurodegenerative conditions are largely, what we consider incurable conditions. They're progressive, and the etiology, the pathophysiology of dementias vary. There's so many different types of dementia. Yeah, if you look at a cellular level, the changes in the brain can be very different from each dementia type. So it is a big challenge, actually. That's why I think, Dr. Cecilia's work is particularly important, because we have to learn to live with it. Yeah? And we have to learn to expect to deal with more and more people living with dementia. Okay, I hope that's enough to satisfy what you're looking for. What's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? Again, this is from a lay term, and dementia is an umbrella term, and Alzheimer's is a specific form of dementia. Dementia itself, there are many different forms, often differentiated not only by the changes in the brain, but where these changes occur in the brain. And as a result, perhaps the manifestation of that dementia. So different forms of dementia may manifest initially quite differently. Yeah, some with very characteristic features, such as Alzheimer's, with people having very difficulties with their memory, getting lost in familiar places, that sort of thing. Other types of dementia may present quite differently. Yeah, maybe a language problem predominantly. All right. We'll quickly move on to the next one. Are there any dementia-specific care homes? Okay, so this would be open to the Dr. Cecilia or Prof. Soma if you've explored this. A dementia-friendly model. I suppose this is from your own personal experience in all these care homes.
To tell you frankly, I've never tried, but I know there are some new centers coming up telling that they are treating or they take or they serve the dementia affected population. I don't know how good it is, or is it just another general nursing home? I'm not sure. And I think probably Dr. Cecilia will be in a better frame of mind because of her relationship with this dementia, these groups with which she works. I'm sure she could give us a much more clarity.
Sorry, I don't come bearing good news when it comes to this. Unfortunately, because it's something that is we actually at our very infant stage when we come to supporting people living with dementia in Malaysia, because it's the most misunderstood and most stigmatized issue conditions, I would say, in Malaysia. We have about I belong to an association called the Age Group, which is a national association of the operators of the nursing homes in Malaysia. Unfortunately, because there's no regulations, there's no proper regulations, there's no proper act. We've talked about it for eons. They in name there is a PAFAS. They have introduced a new act to regulate the nursing homes and the aged care facilities in Malaysia, but it is not reinforced. Right? It's not reinforced. It's been passed on the parliaments, and so we have an act, but we do not know how it works. We do not know what the requirements, what the emphasis, what kind of requirements you need, what are the ratios, staff ratios. There's nothing there. It's just an act, and it's an empty act. So then, because of that, there is no quality. I mean, a minimum kind of standard. What kind of minimum standard? Even we don't even talk about dementia, so general elder care, there is no standard requirement, there is no check and balance. So we have all sorts, so we have people who have got a lot of us are not licensed, right? Because they operate without license, so there's no standard. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry can actually open up a center with or without license, right? So with that in mind, so we are now, even the basic care are not, the standards are not established properly to properly identify the needs. So when we are looking at this, all the nursing, the facilities that we have mixed kind of clients. So we have people who needs palliative care, cancer treatment, people with brain changes like dementia, strokes, post-hip replacement. We even have mental illness mixed together. So it is a very rojak kind of mix. So it's something that is unfortunately is happening. And now because of dementia, it is now thanks to our former Prime Minister, who has been bring a light that the family openly, Butler family has openly acknowledged that he is living with Alzheimer's type of dementia. It's now the buzzword. So also aged care facilities everywhere. Suddenly, and now I will see that, wow, dementia with dementia treatment, dementia care. So it's like, yeah, so it's just a buzzword, that we kind of tell people that we do. So it's basically that we do take dementia clients, but are you equipped with the skills? Because people living with dementia are very different and unique. And when we kind of mix the persons with dementia, this is what happens, the all time, why is she eating my food? And then I've got dementia and you don't have dementia. I'm sitting next to you, and because my brain changes and I can't see my food, and I reach out and take your food, and then there's a big huge going on, and people with dementia, they cannot take all the overwhelming senses like noise, like music and all that. They can't, because of their changes of their vision, and you mix with them, so it becomes a big challenge. and there's abuse going on and all that because of that. So unfortunately, even though there is a buzzword, I'm not really aware of an establishment that really has got their staff being skilled enough, being trained enough, that they are able to properly support the persons living with dementia. But having said that, there are one I can count. There's ADFM has got a daycare center in Petaling Jaya, I think. Yeah, Petaling Jaya. But it is a daycare. ADFM has got a daycare center, and there is one in Perak, in Ipoh. Dr. Esther has also a daycare center in Ipoh for people living with dementia. And I have started a one-stop center up in Pinang. And I've trained my staff. We have a psychologist, a physiotherapist, a nurse, and myself, and a group of volunteers to specifically train them on how to support our persons living with dementia. That's all available in Malaysia, unfortunately.
Well, Dr. Sia, that's actually the work that you do is very valuable. And I think a lot of people here would love to get maybe some resources, yeah, that you've just mentioned just now. You know, if they have a loved one in need and they wanted to find out more about the facilities available, you know, would you be able to share some resources later on of, you know, what families can access? That would
Sure.
be great. And I think you kind of raise an interesting issue, you know, that somewhat explains Prof. Soma's, you know, sort of hesitance about, you know, care homes for his mother. I think it is a struggle for families to provide adequate care themselves, you know, and I think but this issue about care homes is not just Malaysia, it's universal, even in developed countries like the UK where I worked, you know. There are almost always cases and stories of elderly abuse, yeah, in care homes. And I think this is, you know, something that at least as maybe part of an Asian society, we are more aware of, yeah, and we place more emphasis on informal care of our loved ones, so that sort of, you know, we look after our loved ones ourselves rather than risk sending them to a care home. But I think this makes things very challenging because there are people who kind of, you know, can't afford to look after, who just cannot manage, you know, what options do they have? And it's very, you know, it sounds like we're very limited, yeah, in providing the necessary support for those who can't, yeah, actually look after their loved ones themselves. And I don't know if, you know, what extent that this is another probably $1 million question, but to what extent is, you know, dementia social care subsidized by the government in Malaysia? I mean, it's hard to know, isn't it? So from friends and families, you know, people have to pay out of pocket for this, and that includes, you know, treatment and hospital care. Okay, so we're still, I think, a long way away. So the next question is sort of, you know, asking if there's a way to retard the progression of dementia. This is $1 billion question. I mean, if you can find a way to do that, you know, you'd be the richest pharmaceutical company. Is that right? So pharmacological methods, I think we're still a long way away. There's been perhaps this question was created in light of the recent news about a monoclonal antibody that can reduce the accumulation of some of the plaques that we get in Alzheimer's disease. It's still very early, really, to see how effective it is, but the clinical trials have shown some benefit, but very modest benefits in improving sort of function, yeah, in patients with dementia. So I think we're still far away. So I think, again, this brings us back to the message that we have to live with it, and we have to face up to reality, and we have to make the best of this situation. The last question is from someone who knows someone living with dementia, and what help can they give to support? Okay. So I'll, you know, Dr. Cecilia, Prof. Soma, you know, what would be?
I think Cecilia will be a better person in this, because she's the right person, I suppose.
What can you as an individual do, yeah, to support this person?
Yes. So I really appreciate this question because it shows that you care enough, to ask this question, or else you won't bother. So thank you for asking this question. Yes, the answer is yes. There is a lot that you can do to support them. And the one thing that I think is crucial for us to know is to know the person. So when I have a new case or someone living with dementia, I would take an enormous time to get to know the person, to get to know the history. How was she like when she was young? What was her hobby? Was she a teacher? Is it an extrovert? Was she an introvert? Was she religious? What kind of music that she likes? What are her hobbies? So then I would know, and I would be able to kind of draw a model or a therapy, or introduce, even when I introduce a helper. There's one person, this lady is in her 80s, and she has been a single mother all her life, and she's got 4 beautiful children, beautiful children, very dedicated daughters, and they're all living abroad. One daughter came back to Malaysia in KL, and when they were very caring daughters, so they, because their love for their mother, they said, okay, mom, I'm going to bring in a live-in helper, and I'm going to bring in a nurse. They will take care of you. And then they were like, mother was so angry, was so pissed, chased the care person away, the helper away, and so pissed, don't want to talk to the doctor. And then the doctor was like frustrated. What do I do, Cecilia? I mean, of course, they meant well, but the approach was wrong. It is about the approach. So then they came to me and frustrated. My mom refused all the help. How do I help? Then I listened to the story, and so I get to know the mom first, the history. The mom was working very hard. When the father died when they was very young, mom was working in several kopitiam. She was making kopi, and she's very good at making kopi. And then she also helps with the in the kitchen, and she worked several jobs, to bring the 4 daughters up. And later on, she was also very active in the temples, in the society, and she also loves helping other people. And she's a proud person who helps people rather than being helped. Now you reverse the role of, and she knows subtly that there are some changes, because she couldn't do things that she used to. So she stopped cooking. But the same scenario, that if you have been a cook all your life and you have been making soup for the past 50 years, and now suddenly you stop making soup, then you really have to investigate, why is it? So it is because of the sequencing, right? She's like, okay, I'm looking at the ingredients, and I don't know what to do. And I don't know what to do with the chicken bones, and I don't know what to do, what goes next. And she knows that, but she doesn't want to admit. She's like, I'm so lazy to cook. I've been cooking all my life. I don't want to cook now. I better eat bread. I'd rather have cookies. I'll just have crackers. So of course she will make excuses rather than to admit, because if she admit, then the daughter will say, okay, I better have somebody to live in with you, because you're not capable of taking care of yourself anymore. And she despises that. She has been an independent person all her life, and you suddenly bring in a total stranger and you introduce her as the person, your helper. And she said, I don't need any help. Thank you very much. And so when I came in, and this is what I do, it's a long process, but you see the ultimate, the objective is to get her to accept my care, to get her to accept without resistance. That's all we want, okay? So how do we then change our lens? And I said, okay, this one, what is she good at? What is she still very passionate about? So they said, my mom likes gardening. So she has this bonsai tree and bougainvillea. She really manicure them. And so I said, this is what you do. You will introduce me to her as somebody who wants to be her student to learn gardening. Honestly, I'm a horrible gardener. I don't really like to lie, so I'm trying to play with the truth. And I really, and I told her, and I said, I really don't know how, and I plant my pandan, all my pandan die, all my serai die. And can you please help me? And immediately she lit up. Immediately, so we connected, and then she was showing me what is the soil to use, and that kind of automatic, this is so ingrained with her. She loves it, and now she becomes my teacher. She doesn't feel disabled anymore. She's not demented. She's now my teacher, and she's telling me, and at the end of the session, she gave me a little pot, and she, she took the baby, one of the plants, and she put it, and then she said, okay, I'm going to give it to you. You go home and take care of me and report to me every week. And that's your homework. And I said, yes, teacher, and I went back, and then I connected with her with this. She's always the teacher, I'm always the student. And I wanted to go into the house to examine the house to see whether the house is safe or not for her to live alone. I wanted to see the bathroom, whether there are any railings and all that. And I dare not even, and I was to tell her, Auntie, could I go in? I need to use the toilet. Only with her permission, and only when she says, yeah, come in, then I went in, use the toilet. And then I established, by the second time, she's like, oh, we go out for tea, and we connected. And then I managed to introduce another. I can't be the helper because I can't speak, and I also don't have the time. Okay, so we want to have somebody who come and be with her every day, to monitor her every day discreetly, and to support her. And so this person I know is a Cantonese person, because I can't speak Cantonese, I'm Hokkien. So this person came, and I introduced her as this my friend, and she's also sucked at gardening, and all her things like, could you? And then she went in, and then this auntie said, oh, my pots are very small, I need to buy a bigger pot because it outgrew it. And I said, yeah, maybe she can help you, you guys can go shopping together and buy pots. So she went in, and they hit off, and then they become very good buddies. They become to go for morning walks, because the mom stopped walking because they are afraid that she will get lost. She doesn't know the way back. So this lady came and said, I miss walking. Could you accompany me? So it's a reverse role. She is accompanying her, the hidden care person. So now they go shopping together. And then she said, could you teach me how to make soup? The idea is for her to take nutritional food again. But then it's like, okay, so I brought the chicken. Is this, then they go marketing together. And this, what do you think of this chicken? And all that. And this is how they establish. And now we have a live-in helper disguised under Mexican. And then we were able to assess her and see whether, how is she now? Is she having, what are the new challenges? And how can we, so I also have a nurse. So like in dementia care, it's not a lone ranger, like Prof. Soma said. It is very, very time consuming. It is very frustrating. It is also, as dementia progress, it takes a team, to actually care. So if you do it solo, it is very draining. It is very stressful for everyone. So in this, we have a team. So this person comes in, and now, if she subsequently need nursing care, I have a nurse standby. So the team is there to support, without her feeling overwhelmed that somebody is coming over and take over my life. So she doesn't feel that, but we are supporting her discreetly. So that is the way that we do it. I'm always giving you a case scenario so that it's easier for me to give examples, because there's no one size fits all. You do this for everyone. It depends from a person to a person. So it's so important that we get to know a person first, so that we can design the care to fit, that's a good fit for the person. Yeah.
That's great. I love the way you explain things, Dr. Cecilia, that approach that you take, the way you engage. That's the key here. We all need to learn from you, really, on how to communicate with someone with dementia, where you engage with them and maintain that trust. Yeah. And actually you can really see them as the person, rather than a dementia case. And I think that's something that we need to all strive to do with people that have dementia that we're dealing with. Okay, so this is wonderful, and I do hope that with time and with more awareness, access to all the support that people need, and such as the support that Cecilia is giving to people. Unfortunately, you're one person that's doing a lot of work in a field that needs so much work to be done, but we hope that with time and with more support and more awareness, and thanks for educating us today, this will make a difference, in dementia care in Malaysia. Okay, so I think we've come to the end of the session, and I hope the audience has found this webinar and discussion session enlightening. And I have certainly enjoyed learning a lot from our speakers. A big thank you to everyone here today, and also to the students who have worked hard to organize this. I'll revert back to Letitia to close.
Thank you, Dr. Cecilia. Dr. Cecilia and Prof. Somanathan for addressing all the questions just now. With that, we have come to the end of the session. But before we end the session, we would like to take a photo with all of you today. So can everyone kindly turn on your camera? All right, so we will be taking a photo now. So ready? In 3, 2, 1. All right. Second page. Ready? In 3, 2, 1. All right. So thank you, everyone. Special thanks to Dr. Cecilia, Prof. Soma, Prof. Anthony, and Dr. Lim for a wonderful session today. And thank you as well to Taylor's University School of Medicine and Taylor's University Medical Society for their support. And thank you once again to everyone who's present here today. Take care and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Cecilia.